You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, and Spotify, and like Stables Media on Facebook. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.
I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. Frank Vajner is on assignment this week. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vajner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram, wherever he is, at Frank_Vajner. Ed Smith, how was your week and how are you doing tonight?
Well, compared to what I was feeling last week, my mind and my spirit is a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more at ease. So appreciate you asking me that, Taylor, and I'm looking forward to tonight's show.
All right, so we got Tigers to talk about, plus a DSR story of John Wharton in our TMSTP Story Vault. And then we'll talk about plenty of Lions as they prep for Week 1 of the 2020 quarantine NFL season against the Chicago Bears at Ford Field, which might not have any fans, thankfully. But anyway, the Tigers lost 4 of 5 to the Minnesota Twins, 2-0 and 3-2 in the doubleheader in 8 innings. That's Game 2 in 8 innings. Then they lost 4-3 in 9 full innings. Jose Cisnero, a blown save and a loss. He's not a full-time closer. And then Sunday, the Tigers fell behind 6-2, but came back to win 10-8. Casey Mize, first inning, he only threw 9 pitches in a 1-2-3 inning. Second inning, threw 22 pitches in that second inning, but still threw a 1-2-3 inning. Had a little trouble with that 1 6-hole batter, whatever his name is, but he got him out. Must have been a tough out, but the third inning was rough. Gave up 2 runs in that third inning, and then the fourth inning he allowed 2 runners on, but still didn't give up a run, which is better than the third. But the fifth inning he allowed a double and was charged for that run that one of the other relief pitchers gave up. 4+ innings pitched, 3 earned runs, 5 hits, 2 walks, 0 hit batsmen, thankfully, 0 wild pitches, 3 strikeouts. But again, Casey Mize still only 4 starts in. He wasn't the only starting pitcher to have a rough third inning. Michael Fulmer had a rough third inning as well against the Twins. Michael Fulmer went 2 1/3. He didn't make it through that third inning, unlike Mize. Casey Mize actually got through that third inning, if you figure this out. But Fulmer, 2 1/3 innings, 4 earned runs, 4 hits, 1 walk, 0 strikeouts. Fulmer has an 8.24 ERA. Casey Mize's ERA, still 6.75.
Yeah, Casey Mize is still learning the rough and tumble of what works and what doesn't work on the major leagues in terms of batters figuring out your pitches, when to swing, when not to swing. He showed glimpses of what he's good at, what he's best at with that quick 1-2-3 inning. But yet he's also still showing what he has to work on, which is understandable. He's young. He literally just came into the league. So there's still lots of time to grow and improve upon. But the potential is there, yes. But you still have to find out all the tools, create all the other secondary pitches, and make sure what happens to you, all sorts of other elements, your pickoff throws, when to make sure you're not tipping off your pitches, all the other elements. And they truly call it the art of pitching for a reason, as Jim Price would say on the radio. So Mize, I think he's got to figure out his groove. Once he gets settled in, once he finds the right comfort zone, he'll be performing better as a result. There's still lots of promise there. He's just getting a groove on things since this is his first go around up above the minors. Now for Fulmer, I'm really disappointed because it seemed like, in retrospect, does it seem like maybe it was a mistake bringing him back too soon from his injury? I don't know, because he really quite hasn't been the same since. You mentioned how his ERA has ballooned so far. You got to think this was a former Rookie of the Year winner, I believe, former potential Cy Young contender. And to see him go through this brutal stretch where he's almost seemingly flaming out before our very eyes, it's quite disheartening to see, to say the least. And my gut instincts tell me that we're going to see this continue for a more indefinite time period for Fulmer. But I hope I'm wrong on that.
Well, we'll see what happens. But Michael Fulmer, yeah. Good point on him. He has really struggled compared to Casey Mize's willingness to learn.
Right, Mize is understandable. He's a rook. Fulmer's been here. He's been around the block for a few years now.
Yeah,
so that is deeply concerning.
Yeah, this is year 5 for Michael Fulmer. In fact, that's quite a few, all right.
Exactly. He can't be seen as relegated as I'll refer to him as the Brad Penny of the bunch. Remember how back in mid-2010 or early 2010s where, you had your aces of the bunch. You had Verlander, you had Scherzer, you had whoever you had the rotation at the end of the fifth guy, like, okay, Brad Penny, you're probably going to walk away with a loss, but let's see what you get. We're seeing Michael Fulmer, in my view, dangerously shift closer and closer to that status if he's not careful.
Yeah, and then Tuesday and Wednesday, that's yesterday and today, the Tigers split their 2-game series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Tigers' offense was on fire in the 4th and 5th inning. 1 in the 4th, 5 in the 5th. Then Jeimer Candelario had 4 RBIs, including a 2-run home run, I think it's the 7th or the 8th inning. But, he had 4 RBIs. Spencer Turnbull, 6 innings pitched, 0 earned runs, just 3 lousy hits, 3 walks and 3 strikeouts, but at least 13 ground ball outs induced. That is impressive by Spencer Turnbull. He's starting to come on a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a good way to get him more familiar with the defense, and in terms of what better way to help improve on your defensibility on the field with getting more opportunities with more live ground balls. And when you're seeing what Turnbull is doing in terms of producing more ground balls, I think it produces those chances of experience, if you want to call it quick time events, where you can increase or decrease how your value has been in terms of the metrics and whatnot, or overall efficiency with your defense. So I'm sure the infield defense appreciates that. At the very least, more opportunities to get better throughout the game as it goes on, as we saw right there with Turnbull's last start. So, but even more than that, very impressive. They only gave up 3 hits through 6 innings pitched, and that alone set the table for what the rest of the offense was getting ready to do. You mentioned Candelario contributing as well. Big day for him with 4 RBIs. He's now up to .319 batting average, one of the highest in the whole entire lineup. So his contribution is much needed when you see the likes of Miguel Cabrera still trying to eke his way up to more than adequate levels of production. It's good to see another guy in Candelario pick up the load, so to speak.
Yeah, and let me touch on Candelario even further. Ron Gartenhire keeps putting Candelario in the cleanup hole, the 4-hole in the batter's starting lineup. Candelario is not really a home run hitter, but he can knock in some runs. He only has 5 home runs. Still not that many home runs, but I guess a cleanup hitter in a different way, except you knock in a lot of RBIs without having to hit too many home runs.
Well, think about it this way. If you come up to a spot when you're Candelario's spot in the lineup, let's say there's 2 guys on, guy on the 2nd and 3rd, 1 or 2 outs. You don't necessarily need a home run. If you bloop or slap a single out in the outfield, and you have guys with adequate running ability, that could easily score 2 runs, no matter who's in the outfield.
I think it's Victor Reyes and Dan.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying. Well, again, I'm just saying as a hypothetical example. Unless you're, see a guy out there that has an absolute flamethrower of an arm, more oftentimes than not, you're going to have a good opportunity to get at least 1 run, but if not 2, out of that hypothetical scenario I just mentioned. So that explains why Candelario is batting more out of cleanup spot. I think that makes more sense of Candelario batting cleanup now than Jim Leland ever did in terms of putting Miguel Cabrera 4th. And that was even before he got Prince Fielder. You know what I mean? That was even when he got Victor Martinez. He still batted Cabrera at 4th. It wasn't until after they got Prince that Mickey finally started batting 3rd. So, like I mentioned before, that didn't make much sense as what Candelario has been relegated to does now.
Yeah, that was before 2012 when they got Prince Fielder, by the way, and Victor Martinez, I think they got in like 2010 or 2011. But anyway, moving on to Wednesday, the Tigers got shellacked in a rare case, but Matthew Boyd went back to his old self, giving up 7 earned runs, 3+ innings pitched, 8 hits, 4 walks, and just 2 strikeouts. 7.63 ERA thus far this season. And let me make my case perfectly clear to our audience right now. Only a couple good starts don't prove enough points that Matt Boyd is a good pitcher. He's not. Either that or those couple starts might be a fluke. But anyway.
No, I think the record, there's an old saying, you are what your record says you are.
1-6.
Yeah, 1-6. You mentioned the 7.60 ERA. He's got a 1.6 whip. That is just, whenever you hear that, then, by the way, for those wondering, that's walks, hits allowed per innings pitched. And if the goal in that stat and that metric is to have it as close to 1, if not below it, as much as possible. And the higher you go, the more it tells you about your ability in terms of pitch command, keeping runners on and off base, and so on and so forth. So if you got a guy who, in this case, in the case of Boyd, has a whip of 1.6, that's bad because it tells you he's not getting outs. He's not, stopping runners from scoring. He's not controlling situations where, a guy, or he may allow a leadoff guy on, and that runner ends up being the only run scored in the whole inning. That may prove to be the difference later on. Those kinds of things and situations, compared to, say, what Justin Verlander was doing at his apex years ago, his whip was around 1.1, 1.01, or at least in the high 90s. That was him at his good. That's the standard you strive for, the gold standard in terms of wanting to have your whip metric at, compared to what Matthew Boyd is doing right now. Absolutely not. So to see that, he's only gotten 8 total strikeouts. Yeah, he's not necessarily known as a strikeout pitcher per se, but yeah, it's when you're not getting enough strikeouts, you need to find other ways to get more productive outs and not allow too many runs. And when you're not finding that, it really speaks a lot to what you got going on with your repertoire and your command, and really about your talent, essentially. Now, don't get me wrong, this is nothing personal at all. I mean, granted, he's gone through a lot already. He had go through coronavirus tests and whatnot, make sure he wasn't positive, and going through that ordeal. So I commend him for that. But still, I gotta call it the way I see it, and the way I see it right now, it's just not a good look for him right now.
Right. And I said earlier that those couple good starts that he had in between those 3 bad starts, those couple good starts were actually a fluke. Because like I mentioned before, only a couple good starts don't prove enough points that he's a good pitcher. He's not. And like you said, you are what your record says you are. And I mentioned he's 1-6. And I also mentioned a 7.63 ERA thus far this season. That is freaking terrible. That's also worse than Casey Mize' ERA, for crying out loud.
It's putrid. Beyond putrid.
Yeah. So before we get to our upcoming schedule for this week, I'd like to announce some really bad news. The Tigers have reinstated starting pitcher Jordan Zimmerman from the 45-day injured list after suffering a forearm injury last offseason. So, and to make matters worse, Zimmerman is going to start in Game 2 of tomorrow's doubleheader at Busch Stadium against the St. Louis Cardinals. Game 1 of that doubleheader starts at 2:15 with Tarek Skubal starting on the mound for the Tigers, followed by Zimmerman. And then Friday through Sunday, the Tigers head back to Chicago to take on the White Sox. And no, they're not playing the Cubs at Wrigley Field yet. They played them at Comerica Park once before, but not at Wrigley Field yet. They're playing the White Sox at 8:10, 7:10, and 2:10 Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I almost forgot to jot down the games for Monday and Tuesday. Let me look at the schedule on the MLB.com at-bat mobile app right now. They got next Monday off, and then they got a 2-game series next Tuesday and Wednesday against the Royals before welcoming in the Cleveland Indians for a 4-game set. The last home series against the Cleveland Indians next Thursday through Sunday, the 17th through the 20th. And then they head on the road from Tuesday the 22nd and Wednesday the 23rd at Target Field again against the Twins. And then a 4-game set at Kauffman Stadium for the first and only time against the Royals from the 24th through the 27th. So the Tigers don't actually play the Cubs at Wrigley Field at all during this quarantine 2020 season, which is a shame because Wrigley Field is a really memorable place for anybody to play with, whether they're playing the Cubs or not. But anyway, let's stay serious here. Tigers, I think they're 2 games back. They were 1 game back heading into that 19-0 drubbing at the hands of the Brewers. And I think now they're 2 games back of that wild card, which is so obvious that it convinces at least some Tigers fans that the Tigers are contenders, and we might actually have time for a 5-question segment that might include something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I can't wait to get my thoughts on that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. So let's go to our TMSTP story vault from Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag on July 17, 2017. This is a big one. Headlining, John Wharton is human scum. Moss writes, I have only run into former Red Wings trainer John Wharton once in my life. It was during the wee hours of June 7th, 1995 on Rush Street in Chicago, and the Wings had just defeated the Blackhawks in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals. They lost to the Devils in that Stanley Cup final that year, by the way. Continuing on, just hours after Vladimir Konstantinov's weak double overtime shot that miraculously slipped by Blackhawks then goaltender Eddie Belfour, some members of the Wings had taken to the streets of Chicago to celebrate. What I found bizarre about that night was Wharton's bar-hopping companion, none other than former Wing enforcer Bob Probert, who at that point in his career had signed with Chicago. The Blackhawks, I believe 99, probably in a trade for Chris Chelios. Yeah, I remember that well. I thought it was odd that Proby would be hanging out with Wings personnel just hours after his new team had lost a gut-wrenching game to go down 3-0 in the Western Conference Final. Of course, Probert was literally just a bystander that series, as he was suspended for the entire season by Commissioner Gary Bettman due to an arrest for crashing his motorcycle at the intersection of Middlebelt and Orchard Lake Road. Probert's blood alcohol content was thrice the legal limit. Yeah, 3 times, thrice the legal limit. And there were also trace amounts of cocaine in the power forward system. Yeah, his inner organs, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, it was pretty odd to see Probert bouncing from bar to bar on Rush Street with Wharton. But whatever. I hadn't given Wharton much thought in the decade since he left the Wings organization until his horrid takes started popping up on my Facebook and Twitter timelines. How awful are Wharton's social media missives? Just imagine if Kurt Schilling and Lance Berkman decided to do in vitro with Ann Coulter. That Petri dish experiment would result in John Wharton. To say that Wharton is your embarrassing racist uncle doesn't do justice to this man's disgusting beliefs. He is your awful uncle who also went to jail for failing to pay child support and who once attempted to sell his Stanley Cup rings. Is there anything funnier than being in jail for failure to pay child support, and under the marks, scars, and tattoos section of your page, the Department of Corrections website, it lists an angel with 3 children's names underneath. Anyway, with help of DSR Research Chief Mihir Bhatnagar, whom we remember, we have compiled some of Wharton's greatest social media hits. I advise you to have a barf bag at your side just in case. So on Facebook, Wharton wrote and published the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. Here's an idea. He wasn't an athlete, but he mattered to sports. Stuart Scott. If ESPN ignores the most deserving, Lauryn Hill, at least make it about one of your own. Not an attention-starving thingamajig. And other bad stuff about him and Barack Obama and others. We'll stop right there, but you can keep on viewing those Facebook posts by Wharton and see how really bad they are. So in totality, as we recap this thing, as we stop right there, Wharton just said a lot of bad things on social media back then. That's all I can say. So, Ed, as you read through the rest of those social media posts, what do you make of it?
It tells me that this guy is just, like, as the title alludes to, pure and total scum. I mean, when you go through and see all the horrid actions that's being described and explained, it really goes to show the depravity, unfortunately, that some people would choose to follow. It's quite unfortunate. Yeah, it's just speaks badly on his character. And if that's his character, then, I shudder to think what he's like, even more so on a bad day. So, man.
Yeah, I can tell. So, that's John Wharton for you. And this is just to convince Justin Spiro of the Spiro Avenue podcast, who once had an interview with John Wharton on his podcast and thought that Wharton was a good guy. To me, that clearly was a mistake that Spiro made, just with all due respect. But anyhow, that article tells everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that is our TMSTP story vault. And now the Lions. They have signed veteran running back Adrian Peterson to a 1-year, $1.05 million contract with incentives. So the Lions, as you've said before, they can never have enough running backs, but Adrian Peterson of all players. Yikes. I mean, he's getting old, but I believe he's still got at least a little bit left in this tank. Adrian Peterson, to prove that he has a spot behind Matthew Stafford, the Lions have placed running back Bo Scarborough on the injured reserve for at least 3 weeks due to an undisclosed injury. And that, to me, is probably another one of those 5 questions that I could ask. Could AP start in week 1? And that's what NFL experts have been asking and answering. It'll be up to us to figure that out.
Yeah, in terms of first and foremost the signing itself, like I mentioned before, you can never have enough running backs. You saw what glimpses Kerryon Johnson provided. You also saw that he needed a partner, so to speak, to help him carry the load, take the pressure off him so that he wouldn't run himself into the ground and get injured. We seemingly got that this year with DeAndre Swift. Now I think they're bringing in Adrian Peterson for a multitude of reasons. One is to help be a mentor to the younger backs, specifically DeAndre Swift. And I think also in needed situations and moments, he's the right guy you would call upon with his years of experience and just the way he runs in general, following his paths, never stopping his feet, constant motion movement. Whether it be patience behind his line or finding his own open hole. Peterson has displayed that for years upon years at a time. It's why he's a future Hall of Famer for a reason with his skill. And it clearly shows, as we saw this last go-around in Washington, he's still got it. He can still produce. Maybe not at the level where he was, say, 10 years ago, or even after when he returned from blowing out his ACL when he had his comeback MVP year. But he still can be manageable enough to where you get the ball in his hands and you say, hey, we need a 4-minute drive, or hey, we need to set up the pass so Matthew Stafford could do a play action and bomb it out deep. One of the best plays you can draw in the playbook. You do that by establishing run, and what better way to do that with a guy in Adrian Peterson? So, putting all those years aside of where he was just running roughshod over us. Not roughshod, but just giving us the business, so to speak, with those divisional battles with the Vikings. Is it something you want to have on the roster? Sure, why not? If he can produce and help you win games, why would you turn it down?
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought. Adrian Peterson can still play running back. Yeah, he still has that ability. He's lots of experience, especially most of it with the Minnesota Vikings. He's even made a little bit of NFL history, to be honest.
Yeah,
Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, he's only just about 1,000 or so yards away behind from catching up and passing Barry Sanders on the all-time, NFL career rushing yards list. So that's the elite company, the type of elite company that Adrian Peterson finds himself in and finds himself being often compared to, not just with his career, his longevity, but his style and the way he played and how it translated then, even how it translates to now. It's very impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. And the Lions could use Adrian Peterson's magic behind the offensive line and Matthew Stafford. He can start mentoring Kerryon Johnson, Bo Scarborough, Ty Johnson, and others. And at least for the first 3 weeks before, at least for the first 3 weeks and maybe throughout the entire season. So that's out of the way. So before we get to the Chicago Bears game, which we're going to preview next, first off, the injury and practice report. 2 players with no practice and 10 or so with limited practice. Tight end Hunter Bryant with a hamstring, no practice. Safety C.J. Moore with a hamstring, no practice. And then wide receiver Danny Amendola with a hamstring, limited practice. Defensive lineman Deshaun Hand with a groin injury, limited practice. Defensive end Julian Okwara coming off a groin injury, limited practice. Cornerback Darryl Roberts coming off a groin injury, had limited practice. Running back DeAndre Swift, one of the draft picks that the Lions picked up this year, coming off a hip injury, limited practice. Wide receiver Kenny Galladay, one of the valuable wide receivers for the Lions, coming off a hamstring injury, limited practice. And offensive tackle Halapulavati Vaitai with a foot injury, limited practice. So some of those might have a shot to at least play, if not start, Week 1 against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and that's, mind you, that's more so on the it affects both sides, really. When you mention guys like Galladay and Maitai, and it's an element that obviously all NFL teams have to deal with, but it's quite something to see it. We haven't even played a game yet, and already we got to deal with guys on the list.
Definitely. So, you know where that leads us to, right? The Chicago Bears at 1 on Fox at Ford Field this Sunday. Kickoff at Ford Field. It might not have any fans, but it's a fun game to watch on television at least. So let's get down to it. Nick Foles, the Bears. Nick Foles at quarterback. Now the Chicago Bears. But I believe they still have Khalil Mack. Is that right? Unless he's with another team. But
no, Khalil Mack is on defense. But yes, he's still there. But I think what you're trying to allude to is that Nick Foles is there, but I believe they're still rolling with Mitchell Trubisky as the starter for Week 1, which honestly could be more beneficial to the Lions when you think about it. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah. So this is actually what we're previewing right now: the Lions and the Chicago Bears. Do you have any analysis? The tail of the tape, the matchups, of course.
Well, obviously,
the Lions and the Bears.
Well, in honor of the late great Jamie Sanderson, I can offer up at least 3 or so keys the Lions need to do to establish what they need to come away with the victory here. I think, obviously, number 1, establish the run. That's a given. It's going to be quite a test, though, because the Bears are known for were known last year having a very stout defense, led primarily by the efforts of one Khalil Mack. So the matchup here in this one is going to be Khalil Mack versus any of the Lions running back core. It could be DeAndre Swift. It could be Kerryon Johnson. It could very well be Adrian Peterson himself. So that'll be at least one matchup I'll be looking forward most to seeing in that game. The spread for some reason is Lions -3. But I think that's more incumbent upon the fact that Trubisky is being named the starter, because I think if Foles were the starter, that spread, in my view, would be shifting more towards Chicago's favor. But I digress. The Lions are here. Trubisky is starting. We have Stafford. And I think, again, it's very going to be incumbent upon a phrase I've often used before. The Lions will go as far as Matthew Stafford takes him. We saw what happened last year when he goes down for any extended amount of period of time, they collapse. So he's really the glue, essentially, that's holding them all together. And with the Lions, in my view, not really shoring up too much on the backup QB spot this year or this past offseason, it's, they try to make some improvements on it, by bringing in Chase Daniel and whatnot. But let's be honest, if Stafford goes down, their season goes out in flames. So keeping him healthy will be the key. Is going to be essential to what the offensive line does, not just establishing the run against that Bears defense and Khalil Mack, but also, more importantly, keeping Mack and other players from sacking the bejesus out of Stafford. So you got to make sure that run is established. You got to make sure that Stafford is being kept upright as much as possible. You're not letting him get hit, letting him get dinged up, which is going to affect his production throughout the course of the game. And most importantly, in my view, when you're going against a defensive team like this, you got to make every single possession count as much as you can, because knowing the weaknesses that the Lions had on their defense from last year, obviously this first game of the new season will be a test to see what the new look defense will be. But still, you got to expect that not everything will be completely fixed in terms of issues and schemes and whatnot will be completely fixed overnight just because they added Jeff Okudah and a couple of other players to free agency. Some problems are going to be still there and lingering. The question is, what improvements have they made? Can they get off the field on third down? Can they at least create some pressure on the quarterback? Granted, they didn't really shore up their defensive line, but can they do something, make a change, make any type of adjustment that can help produce more added pressure on the QB, which in turn gives you better defensive productions, gets you the heck up off the field. So there's always that to look forward to. So that'll be the elements I'll be looking at the most. Establishing the run, protecting Stafford, and what improvements did you make in terms of defensive schemes, approaches, adjustments, et cetera, to make you believe this is a better team overall compared to last year.
Yeah, and that would be key number 4 right there. Your third key was make every possession count while you're on offense, especially against that stingy Bears defense. Mm-hmm. The Bears at least on the Lions' part have Cody Parkey, who still can't kick a football through the uprights. And like I mentioned just a few seconds ago, the fourth key, improve on defense. If the Lions couldn't shore up their defensive line, at least they still have a good defensive back department. They added Jeff Okudah, elite talent, but is it going to be enough? We'll have to see throughout the NFL season as it rolls along. So I want your prediction. Take a wild guess.
Prediction, knowing the fact that, by the way, I forgot to mention that Adrian Peterson and his connections with Darrell Bevell, the offensive coordinator as well. So that might have been also one reason why he came over here as well. So knowing how Bevell wants to try to implement Peterson, provided he gets any type of touches in the game. If not, they're going to have to go through a different game plan. But either way, between trying to get your running backs involved more to take the pressure off of Stafford, I expect a heavy dosage of that, mix and balance up with running and passing, utilizing all of your running backs to get first downs, keep the clock moving, and again, alleviate pressure off Stafford to the point where even against the Bears defense, I just think the Lions will be able to do just enough in certain offensive possessions. And knowing that you're facing a less than ideal quarterback in Trubisky, who may not light you up as much as I expect him, as I hope to not see, that combined makes me think the Lions will do just enough to get a 20-17 win.
All right. I'm going to go below a little bit this time and say 19-16. But either way, the Lions are going to win by 3 points because, again, we keep remembering that they still have Matt Prater as their place kicker. Prater can kick them very long and through the uprights, unlike Cody Parkey. So there's a lopsided matchup for you that favors the Lions, doesn't it? But anyway, the Lions need to score more touchdowns. That's one of my keys.
Yeah, having a kicker like Prater helps, but it don't mean anything if you're going to keep having great, productive drives and you stop just short of the end zone. You got to come in with 3 instead of 6.
Yeah, or better yet, 7. Can't forget about that extra point, you know what I mean? But anyway, Ed says Lions 20-17. I say Lions 19-16. So, our predictions are very, very damn close. So, since we have some time here, let's talk about the news that's going around involving the Big Ten and the coronavirus stuff. The Big Ten commissioner and the other conference commissioners like the Pac-12 and stuff, they've been in discussions with, I don't want to say the name, but somebody by the name of President Donald Trump wanted to have the college football schedule to be reinstated. Now, we all remember it was postponed due to coronavirus complications, but if they're going to reinstate the college football season, they better darn well come up with some safety guidelines and rules. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Same way they open up gyms and restaurants and bars and other places. And with a high school football season, that was reinstated, but only to a 6-game regular season. But the college football season is still up in the air, and I've been hearing rumors that it might actually be reinstated, but nothing official yet. Ed, what do you make of it? Give us the best analogy that you have.
Okay, I think in terms of, this may be an example of desperate times call for desperate measures. I do believe eventually that we are going to see Big Ten football resume again, but it's just a matter of making sure it's being done safely enough to where the players, because let's be honest, there have been examples of cases of where actual players, they've not only contacted the disease, they've also suffered from it to the point where the long-term effects are going to be something to watch out for. So that's the type of examples that's weighing on the mind of the Big Ten commissioner as he tries to wade out through this highly volatile tripwire of a situation that could blow up on either side. So that's the deadly balance that he weighs. So I don't envy his position right now. I wish that the NCAA had a better plan in motion compared to when they did this about similar to what the NFL, the NHL, in a bubble-like similar environment could have done. Granted, I understand that, right, with universities and schools themselves not allowing students or going under lockdowns and quarantines, like, hey, that maybe would have been a sign that maybe you just now wasn't the time to focus on fall activity sports. Maybe you should have just taken the cue and say, hey, everything's going on in fairness to everyone else. Maybe we shouldn't have a season this year, period. But no, you're not, and we're here now. So now you got to make the best of what you got. I really don't know when, where, and how we'll be seeing more Big Ten football anytime soon. Now if an 11-hour deal gets struck up, now what? Now I'm guessing, now hear me out here, this may sound crazy, but, after the last 4 years, anything is possible, right? What if, let's say, for good press, a deal is struck up just in time, right before the election in certain key states of where, like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio, but, hey, look, see, we got deals done. We got college football back for you. Now vote for us, please. As a sort of like desperate October surprise. Keep an eye out on that. I'm just saying, watch that space. But I digress. I don't envy the Big Ten commissioner and whatever position he does, or I just hope he gets, he has started out clearly and weighed all his options before reacting. It's always better to wait and think than to irrationally react out of emotion.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, Ed. So at any time would be a good time if the college football season were to be reinstated. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on things like that, and we'll see what exactly happens or if it's still on and stuff like that. So let's get to that 5-question segment, shall we? Haven't done this in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Question number 1. Are the Tigers contenders? Now, to answer my own question, I may not think they should be contenders with a 19-0 drubbing, like I mentioned before, at the hands of those Milwaukee Brewers earlier today. But I still can't believe that they're this close. It convinces probably most Tiger fans that they are still contenders for a playoff spot. But Ed, I want your explanation and answer.
Let me keep my answer short for you. It's a no. Okay, when you're a team that's 3 games under 500, you're a team that's closer to the bottom of your division than it is to the top. I don't give a damn what no wild card standings may see or say. You could be half a game out at one of those 2 spots. I don't care. This team is not that good enough. They don't have the right pieces in play in certain spots yet to prove themselves as a viable contender. And for that reason alone, I'm saying no. I don't need to go any further than that. It's just common sense here. When you look at this team, how it's made up, how they're constructed, payroll or not, who's in charge, both manager and general manager, and frankly ownership, it's not a surprise to where they're at right now. And to call them contenders in this day and age is just silly. This is not 2011 through 2014 anymore, sadly.
Right. Not even 2016 anymore either. Although it kind of seems like that 2016, they only fell 1 game short of that second AL wildcard spot. And then they gave Brad Ausmus the option for 2017 to become the manager for just 1 more year before they showed him the door. But anyway, the point is, to your point and to your answer, the Tigers definitely don't deserve the postseason, especially after losing 19-0 to the Milwaukee Brewers.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No way, Jose. Question number 2. Was Jordan Zimmerman reinstated at the wrong time?
If you ask me, George Zimmerman was reinstated at the right time because, to me, this team needs to understand that, hey, this is our reality, this is our limitations, this is what we got. We put out our best foot forward, put out our best available talent, let them perform. If we win, great. But listen, this team is not a contender right now. So when you realize and see that and accept the fact that, hey, there's more chances to get more Casey Meises and more Spencer Turnbulls and more Mike Mannings out there through the draft, and you've been doing a good job by being horrible so far, so why not keep that trend up? So I could see that as being a possibility yet again.
Yeah, they only have like 10 or so more games to go, so it's probably too late for them to tank anyway. But anyway, they could probably tank in 2021 again.
At the very least, at the very least, miss out on playoffs and have enough games lost where you be considered in that good enough range where you can get a good guy.
Yeah. Follow-up question here. This one just popped in my head. If the Tigers miss the playoffs anyway, even if they don't tank, can they still either extend Ron Gardenhire as manager or can they let him go? Or can Ron Gardenhire retire after this season? Because this is the last year of Ron Gardenhire's 3-year contract. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, that says something that they don't have any type of succession plan set up, because Gardenhire is up there in age, in terms of and career and everything else that he's done and gone through in this game. So I would think they would have done just a little bit younger in that regard in terms of finding the proper replacement. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, and we already know that Ron Gardenhire was brought out of retirement prior to the 2018 season, and that's what our audience still needs to keep in mind. They brought him out of retirement, just like they brought Jim Leyland out of retirement prior to 2006, and he almost won, and 2 times. Leyland almost won 2 World Series with those guys, but Gardenhire never even came close. Has never even come close, by the way. So, question number 3. Shifting to the Lions. Can Adrian Peterson start in the first 3 weeks, at least, for the Lions?
I believe he has a good enough chance to start week 2, because I think this week 1 will be a feel-out game. Because you got to remember, there was no preseason, so there really wasn't a chance for those roster spot battles and depth chart battles to be played out more. So we may be seeing implements and elements of that being implemented here, especially at the running back spot. So depending on who does the best at the running back spot, that could determine who gets the starting role in week 2. So I'm leaning towards yes, but I want to see what the rest of the running back core does on Sunday before I be more definitive with my decision.
Yeah, wishful thinking for me. I would love to see Adrian Peterson start at running back and Jeff Okudah start at cornerback in the same game against those Bears. I would just love to see that picture. At least for my own self.
Trust me, you wouldn't be wrong for thinking that image. Trust me, there's a lot of people.
Right, lots of Lions fans especially.
Yeah.
Lots of Lions fans especially.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Jeff Okudah, question number 4. How will Jeff Okudah handle his first career NFL game as the Lions take on the Bears at Ford Field?
I think he'll be fine. The fact is he's playing at home, fans or no fans, he's playing at he's going to be playing at a comfortable, familiar environment. And if you're a young player making your first career game, play, appearance, whatnot, it's something valuable to have. And I think that's going to do good wonders for his development. And we'll see where it goes from there. Yeah,
all he needs to do is just be himself, just like he was at Ohio State. Just use his recovery abilities, his running speed, his high jumping abilities, and his ability to record interceptions and maybe even pick sixes. And that's what I'm thinking, because I know he's got elite talent. Development, well, he might need some, he might not need too much, who knows. But we'll see. Question number 5, last but not least, can Matthew Stafford stay healthy and have a somewhat better year?
I'll be honest with you, Taylor. I really don't know the full answer to that. You want to say yes, but let's be honest. The last 2 back-to-back seasons for Stafford have been ended due to a back injury. He's not getting younger. He's been in this for over 10 years now. And not to mention the fact that he's dealt with other injuries in the past, whether in regards to his ankle or, his finger on his throwing hand. Stafford's a tough guy, so he doesn't complain about what he get the dings and nicks and what he goes through. But trust me, it shows in certain moments when he thinks everyone isn't watching, but trust me, it's there.
Yep, it is there, all right. So that is our 5-question segment. And again, like I mentioned before, it's been a long time since you and I have done a 5-question segment since our old episodes on Spreaker, by the way, on my channel, Taylor Phillips, the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. And now we've taken it Primetime. I think it's like the second time that we've done this on a Primetime network. Yeah, I remember us doing one 5-question segment on the Stables network one time. I just don't remember when. That was probably like a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But anyway, since we got less than 5 minutes left in this thing, why don't we go ahead and go to the closing statement segment right now. Ed, take as much time as you need. Go ahead.
I think my closing statement for this week, compared to what was said last week, I can convey that message in a more similar fashion for this week, with a more clear head, more chance to breathe, more chance to really think and reflect, And seeing what we're seeing more with more of our sports teams getting more back involved could be a better metaphor. What we as a whole have been going through this year in terms of we're absorbing and getting hit with the biggest punches that we've ever seen and felt. And yet, we're finding our best to shrug it off and get back to our escapes, get back to what we knew best, gave us the best relief, gave us the best pleasure, whatever. So I would say embody that more and also show a will and determination that no matter what has been done to you or of you or to anyone around you, just know that it's far from over and we're just getting started.
Yep. My closing statement, the Tigers may look like contenders for a playoff spot according to the standings as of right now, but they clearly don't deserve it. And the injuries are not an excuse. Of course, we lost C.J. Cron out for the season. Jonathan Scope may have left Tuesday's game with a left wrist contusion when getting hit by the pitch, but he returned for Wednesday's game, and he didn't make an excuse. He played. But they clearly don't deserve it, especially when Casey Mize is still trying to develop and Matthew Boyd is still being Matthew Boyd. And like I mentioned before, a couple good starts don't prove enough points that Matthew Boyd is a good pitcher. He's not. Like I mentioned a few times before, he's 1-6. He has a 7.63 ERA. Those stats are beyond terrible for a starting pitcher. Matthew Boyd is not a starting pitcher, period. He's better off either relief pitcher or in the minors. As for the Lions, like I mentioned before, I would love to see Adrian Peterson and Jeff Okuda start on offense and defense. Peterson on offense and Okuda on defense. And hopefully Matthew Stafford stays healthy and has a somewhat better year.
And if I can tag on one more thing regarding with the Lions, Matt Patricia, show me that you deserve, that you want to keep your job past this year, please.
And use your damn brain, Matt Patricia, please. Same goes for Darrell Bevel, the offensive coordinator. Remember that timeout that they called when the Lions had a first down, when they blew a 24-7 lead to the Arizona Cardinals in Week 1 at the University of Phoenix Stadium? It ended up in a tie, which the Lions got a break. They did not lose when they should have, when they blew that lead, but they should have won initially, but then again, they should have lost in the end.
Yeah, it's called they didn't have, for some odd reason, they did not have trust in Matthew Stafford to close out that game or knowing what to do or make that right play, as if he's not been a veteran of the game for how many years now? So Stafford was pissed, and understandably so. So I think throughout the year, they've learned from that, and you saw in other certain elements and moments and situations that they just trusted Stafford. He knew and knows what to do, and essentially, more often than not, he's going to make the right play. Just trust your quarterback, and he'll lead the way for you. Think about that, Patricia.
Yeah, definitely. Got to come up with better in-game decision, and just let the Lions get that first down. And by the way, they play at Arizona again this season, too. Keep an eye on that schedule for me, will you?
Yeah, especially the fact that they got DeAndre Hopkins now, so yippee.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins for the Cardinals. Oh, yeah. He'll be a massive, dangerous weapon for
Thanks,
Arizona.
Bill O'Brien. God.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins left the Texans because he wanted no part.
No, he was traded. He was traded.
He was traded. Oh, yeah,
traded.
That's right. He requested a trade. Didn't he? Yeah, that's right.
Oh, my God. Bill O'Brien makes Alan Vila look semi-competent by comparison.
Oh, yeah. We can watch those urinating tree videos of Bill O'Brien. And congrats, Texans. And can you believe the Texans named Bill O'Brien the general manager of the team? How very stupid.
Ugh.
Wow.
Well,
yeah.
Well, compared to the other team in Houston, other teams in Houston, it's not too much surprising.
Yep, definitely. But that's why DeAndre Hopkins requested that trade. He must have, probably. So anyway, that's our closing statement. Ed, great job as always. Hopefully Frank will join us starting next week, and hopefully he asked for time off from his workplace. But anyway, that is another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, Primetime Edition on Stables Media. On behalf of Frank Vasner, for Ed Smith, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. Hit him with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe.